Timcast IRL will be live in Miami with Patrick Bet David, Donald Trump Jr., Matt Gaetz, and Luke Rudkowski. Join us there. Get your tickets by clicking the link in the description below or by going to timcast.com. We got this tweet from Elon Musk. I didn't call it a tweet. Call it a Twix.
Twix.
A post.
Twix.
Look at this. I love that this is the, look how silly this looks. This is ridiculous. Elon Musk went to Eagle Pass and started live streaming at the border during the immigration crisis. I'm glad he's doing it. I'm glad he's making this a major issue. Elon going there makes this bigger news for everyone. It's fantastic. But this picture is just so silly. Look at, he's got like the guy behind him all smiley and, you know, whatever. It's funny. But he did 2 live streams. And this one you can actually see there are illegal immigrants that are behind this, I don't know, orange chicken wire of some sort. And then we have this from the Daily Mail. Elon Musk reveals he backs the border wall and says migrants must have a shred of evidence to claim for asylum, days after announcing visit to crisis-hit Eagle Pass. So, look, man, right now at Eagle Pass, people are just flowing in. There's CBP allowing them in, and then they're all being shipped up to various cities where we end up with mass protests. The scariest thing, I want to make sure everybody understands, because I'm seeing these leftists on Twitter be like, who cares? Okay, well, the people in Staten Island are the ones who are getting all of these people dumped in their neighborhoods, and now the police are beating and arresting the locals. So yeah, it matters. And Elon Musk parachuting in is good because it highlights the problem.
Yeah, and Elon's done a really good job lately of paying attention to this issue. Months ago, we were covering the fact that he was, doing his exclamation point tweet, response to people, which, it's not him saying anything. He's just calling attention to it with this massive magnifying glass that he has. And he's been indicating that more and more this is concerning him. And so the fact that he's going down there right now is so important. Because, of course, we see so many of our elected officials in high-powered, right up all the way through the presidency, they just can't even be bothered with the whole thing. And in the past month, Eagle Pass is averaging around 2,000 illegal crossings per day.
That's a lot.
And that's one location, right?
One location. It has been the hotspot pretty much for the entire Biden border crisis. But recently, it's gotten even worse. It was bad every day, all day. But recently we hit a day record, a single day record, which was about 2,200, and 2 days later it was 4,000. And so it's getting worse and worse.
I've heard that because of South America has the summer in our winter, that the springtime come March and April is going to be when it tends to bump up the most. And if we're getting 2,000 people a day or 3,000 people a day at one of the high volume border crossings, come March, it's going to be insane. Without some kind of change in policy.
Just in time for the election.
I mean, I don't want...
You think Biden would be doing everything in his power right now to put a stop to this because it's just in time for the election? I don't know. That's why I'm like, do they want to lose running Joe Biden and a border crisis? Because immigration's a huge issue. When you have people in New York City protesting AOC over immigration, y'all Democrats are in trouble.
Yeah, they're screaming at the buses. They're yelling at everybody, telling them to go home. New York City, actually, today I saw a flyer that they put out that's from the city of New York saying, go somewhere else. You're not going to be housed here. This is a very expensive city. You will be better off somewhere else. The city is doing that, Democrats.
And this comes, of course, only a couple of weeks after Eric Adams said they're destroying the city.
Which they are.
They are.
It's turning into a nightmare. Yeah,
absolutely. And you're watching these liberals that have been, crowing about the city being a sanctuary city, and across the country they've been doing this. Well, they're getting a taste of their own medicine. I'll be perfectly honest. I wasn't a fan of the busing stunt that Texas launched last year. I thought it was basically just them participating in the redistribution of illegals. And we know for a fact that the amount that are in New York City, for instance, it's only about 10% were bused there by Texas. The other 90% are coming in of their own accord, being brought in by NGOs, being brought in by the Biden administration, maybe even flying in, we're learning now, straight to JFK. So it's only about 10%, but it's been quite effective, and it has really highlighted the hypocrisy.
The defense of the busing the people from the border to Texas was, well, he can't deport them anyway. And I'm just like, my attitude is kind of, look, man, if you have to choose between sending a bus to New York and just returning them to Mexico in violation of, I don't know, federal law or whatever, I'd go with like, hey man, they entered illegally. We're going to send them right back. And then let Mexico send a communication over how we deal with this. But if these people have already illegally entered Mexico or they are Mexican citizens, then I don't see what the argument is for some kind of like I don't even think it's a law. I think it's some kind of treaty or something, or like international relations must be held by the federal government. And so what happens is they come in and Texas is like, well, we can't do anything. The federal government won't let us. So they put him on a bus and they send him to New York. I like some of it, right? It created a shock to the system. It created press, but I think you're right. If they didn't do this at all, imagine if Texas, Florida, and whatever, Arizona, whichever other states were doing it, never did. Mm-hmm. They'd still have a migrant crisis in New York City. They'd still be saying the same things, only now they have a scapegoat. Now they can say it's Republicans that are doing it on purpose.
Right, that's interesting. And then you also had DeSantis sending people to Martha's Vineyard, which was sort of an amazing stunt, I thought.
Yeah, that was brilliant. That was good.
That was very clever.
Sending a small handful of people to a sanctuary city that has the means to support them, I think was better for the people. The migrants themselves got one of the best deals ever. You're going to Martha's Vineyard, baby.
Right?
I've never even been there.
That's pretty nice.
And then it made the people at The View and all these other liberals lose their minds in panic.
The more you can make people that have the luxury opinion of open borders, the more you can make them feel the repercussions from that, the better, right? Like, because it's real easy when you live in, the Northeast. I'm from New Hampshire, Massachusetts. It's easy to say, oh, you should let people in. Everyone should be able to come in, et cetera, because you don't feel the daily pressures that, that number of people constantly straining your infrastructure. They don't feel it. So if you can get them to partake in the actual
Suffering.
reality of
the actual
people coming
suffering
in.
of it.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I was trying to be a little more specific with my words, but yeah, essentially, if you can make them feel the pain, then that's a good thing, because until most people have luxury opinions that don't affect them, so they're like, well, it's okay for this because someone else will deal with it. It's very, very easy to say it's someone else's problem. It's really hard to say it's someone else's problem when you can't walk out of your door without stepping in human feces.
Right.
But
New York already had that problem.
San Francisco. I mean, my attitude is kind of at this point, everybody should be as self-sufficient as possible. They should be doing what they can to get out of cities to get more. I mean, look, it's just you're better off. We have a video that we'll talk about in the members only section tonight, where it's students fighting at high schools, a trans student fighting, beating up. But we'll save that. But my point is not to hash that story out before we get to it. These things are happening in your schools, in these districts where they've got this weird wokeness ideology. You need to get away from these places. You need to be self-sufficient, self-sustainable, because it's clear that the government does not have your back. Staten Island is the perfect example of social order breakdown. Philadelphia is the next best example. They bring in illegal immigrants into Staten Island when the locals say, hey, man, you can't do this. This is our neighborhood. The cops beat and arrest them. And then you get Philadelphia, where people run around, 100 people running around, teenagers, smashing up storefronts and stealing iPhones, iPads, fighting with cops, and only half of them get arrested. Social order breakdown is happening. Does it completely break down until it doesn't exist? I don't know, but ain't nobody coming to save you. Even if Trump gets arrested, you got to still deal with the on-the-ground stuff happening in front of your house. What did I say?
You said arrested.
Oh, no, elected.
He already got arrested.
Right, he already got arrested. If Donald Trump gets elected, it's going to, I believe, there is a strong probability it gets things back on track, but it still means the swamp is all around you. You may hope that Trump pulls that plug and drains a lot of it, but it's going to be there for a while. You don't clean up this mess overnight. So that being said, the more I see this stuff, the more I'm hoping that people become self-sufficient and remove yourself from the ramifications of the horrible policy. So if you're not in New York City, you're going like, wow, that's too bad for the people who live there who are voting for this. It does suck for the people who are there who don't want it. But at a certain point, I'm kind of thinking like, the only way this is resolved is getting resolved or will be resolved is because people in New York City are now experiencing the problem. When it was just a Texas problem, they said, who cares? You're crazy. Now that it's a New York problem, now you're going to get the whole country screaming about illegal immigration, finally.
And you had recently a video of Chicago residents, who most of them were presumably Democrats, berating the city council and saying, and in, essentially paraphrasing what they said, but almost a direct quote, if you don't do something about this, we're going to do something about this, and you're not going to like what we do.
That's crazy. That's scary, man. We don't,
There's
none of that.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a lot of black Democrats in Chicago who are really fed up with this too.
Yep.
I thought that was really interesting too. For a minute, I kind of had this hope that perhaps there would be an abolition of color lines and we could all just be like, we're Americans. You guys are invaders. I'm sorry that your country is going to hell over there, but we don't want ours to have that happen to it.
I said this yesterday. I really need to say it again because look, for people who watch every show, you hear me say some things a couple times, maybe a lot, but not everybody watches every show. Imagine what it must be like, and I can only imagine. I'm not black, right? But imagine you're a Democrat, black or white. The narrative is black people have been oppressed by this country and are owed for it. Reparations should be paid. Now imagine you are a black voter, and many of you watching probably are, and you're being told over and over again how much you're owed because of what this country has done to you. Then they say, but don't worry, we're not going to give you money. Every 4 years, we'll dangle the carrot in front of your face. We're going to claim we owe you the money. Then we're going to open the border, bring in people who don't even live here, who've not experienced anything we've claimed you've experienced, and then we're going to give them money. It's at that point, my attitude is kind of like, if you don't give me money, I'm not going to cry about it. Just don't take my tax dollars. But if you dangle the money in front of me saying like, yeah, this is your money, we don't worry, we're going to get it to you. Oh, who's that guy? Here you go, buddy. And you toss him a chunk of cash. Now I'm pissed off.
Well, that was the thing too in New York is they were bringing in illegal immigrants, setting up a whole tent city type of things, giving them free Xboxes and stuff, moving homeless New Yorkers out of shelters. I mean, there were already plenty of homeless in New York. New Yorkers, families, people with jobs who can't afford to live there, but they have a job. Their families they're like trying to make it work. And these people, these New Yorkers were moved out of the shelters that were built for New Yorkers so that illegal immigrants could come in, all because of stupid Joe Biden. And the thing too about that is the situation in New York where there was a sanctuary city and also where there's a right to shelter law, which means that if someone shows up and asks for a place to sleep, the law is you have to give it to them. That only works if you're dealing with the homeless residents of your own city. It doesn't work when you're dealing with 100,000 people from wherever who also are not assimilated. They don't want to assimilate. And we have progressives saying you shouldn't assimilate. So there was a case today. Someone an illegal immigrant was arrested for allegedly raping a 7-year-old girl at an airport hotel.
God.
You have the Roosevelt Hotel. We had a reporter go out for Human Events, Jackie Toberoff, and she was saying that the hotel is essentially culturally divided. It's like Hispanics on one side and Africans on another.
Wow.
And there's fights on the corner.
Yep.
I mean, what a mess. When you had immigrants coming through Ellis Island, the idea was they were going to assimilate. Their kids were American. And
they could be adequately placed.
Yes.
So we know, hey, your new family's coming in. We have locations in this area where we can help you get set up. And that way people integrate into the society. When people come here illegally, they just go and they find out where their friends are and they create enclaves. I don't blame them for doing it. It's what humans do. But then you end up with what isolated mini societies, right? Like neighborhoods that don't view themselves as part of the greater city or state or whatever.
And then no-go zones, if that is allowed to proliferate even further. But, I had a lot of relatives that came in my family tree and that came through New York City. They immigrated there. And when they were coming through, you had to provide chest x-rays. Right. You had to provide a sponsor that was already in the States.
You had to have like $5 or something. You had to I think you had to have some amount of cash.
Yep.
But you also couldn't have a job already lined up.
Right.
Because the deal was you couldn't be taking a job from an American already here.
Exactly.
And now you have AOC and Hakeem Jeffries and all of these people coming out being like, we have to make sure they can get jobs. People in New York need jobs. New Yorkers need jobs.
Jacques Fresco made a great point that I brought up earlier today. He was in an interview, it's the old Zeitgeist stuff. If you guys are familiar with that documentary, he said when he was a kid during the Depression, he saw people in an unemployment line, and across the street was a factory with no workers, and he was like, "Why can't we get the workers in the unemployment line into the factory?" Well, he wasn't literally saying you could. He was saying like this is an issue of a failed economic state. The workers from the unemployment line couldn't necessarily do the job at the factory, so you have people who need work and a place that needs workers, and it can't make it work. But from understanding that principle, if you've got, let's just flat numbers, 100 jobs in your town, and you've got 110 people. Okay, you've got 10 people who need jobs. Some people die, some people move out. Now there's a few job openings. 50 illegal immigrants come in. No, let's say 10. Let's say just 10, right? 10%. They start taking up these jobs, And the left argues that the immigrants create demand and create jobs. Yes, but not immediately. So what happens is these jobs are going to be filled based on market competition. Some of these businesses are going to say, well, we're going to hire these guys. More importantly, AOC is saying they're going to get work permits for these non-citizens, which means if you're someone struggling to find work, AOC is going to make sure one of these guys takes the jobs that are available that you should be getting.
Exactly.
And then maybe in a year or two, the demand will increase enough to where more jobs will come into fruition. But ain't nobody's creating a job at their business based off of a week, a month, or a couple months.
Exactly.
If revenue increases over, like, let's say like 100 illegal immigrants come into my neighborhood and now I'm selling more cheeseburgers. Yes. At the end of the month, I'll calculate how much money I made, how many more burgers I got to buy, what my profits were, and then we'll carry on. Maybe after 6 months, I'll say, okay, demand is getting greater and greater. We're going to bring on some more employees, but it's not going to be right away.
Right. No, it's not going to be right away.
And how much, when that happens, how much of what they're earning then gets sent back home? We have remittances never get talked about. And how much are they going to start taking out of the system? Because inevitably they find ways to leach the system, whether it's, through the schools or through, welfare or food stamps, EBT programs. And then another example of just the madness in New York City and residents, American citizens being pushed to the back of the line. We had at the beginning of the school year, something like 19,000 illegal alien children entered the school system. And so kids were showing up to school at city schools, and American citizens were being turned away from school. And we're told very often that a lot of these kids, the only meals they're getting that day are at school. We're told that all the time.
They tell us that all the time.
Right.
And then you had Letitia James, the Attorney General in New York, who's trying to destroy Trump's life and his business and his entire family. She said that New York State was going to sue school districts that did not allow the children of illegal immigrants into the schools. Now, the thing in New York is New York City schools got shut down like March 13th, 2020. They were out that whole semester. They were out most of the entire next year. There were policies in place where if your kid got exposed to COVID, then they couldn't go to school for 2 weeks. And there was like some whole testing regimen, which we went through like a half a dozen times. My kid was never in school. It was a disaster. So you have all of these kids in New York, a lot of whom are poor already, a lot of whom have English as a second language, who are already behind. They're behind in maths. They're behind in science and reading and everything. Already behind. Now you're throwing in a bunch of kids who have made some like ridiculously difficult trek all through South America to get here, who are also behind. They haven't been in school and they also don't speak English. So what's going to happen to the citizens, the citizen children of New York? They're supposed to inherit this city. They're supposed to keep the lights on, keep it going all night as the story of New York goes. And they're not going to have a chance. And the state is going to make sure they don't have a chance. That's their goal.
And not to mention, on the school thing, the school officials admitted before the school year started that if you were basically a migrant child and you were entering the school system, you did not have to provide proof of immunization the way that Americans do.
For anything. And then there's tuberculosis at the border.
Right.
What's going on? Why are we so obsessed with destroying our own country and destroying our own kids' chance to succeed, and then telling immigrants you don't even have to be American. If the immigrants who are coming in do not decide to be American and take up our cultural values, which who even knows what they are at this point, then the nation is screwed. Look what's going on in France and Sweden and all of these places.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.